Okay, so you might have heard about Stripe. If you haven't, let me tell you, Stripe is a service that allows businesses accept online payments easily through net banking and all. If you don't know about it, that's totally fine because it's not the main point of concern today. What we do want to discuss today is their website, which is quite impressive. So if you go through the website and initially, if you see, it honestly looks like a template website. Like, I will be very honest, I have seen this kind of structure, but as you scroll down, you'll realize that this is not your local basic website because the animations that you see are pretty impressive. And no, these are not video loops, they are actually components that gets triggered based on scroll effects, hover effects, and click effects. I mean, when you click into it, it kind of routes to that particular section. So, what if I tell you we are going to replicate this website, their animations, using only two things, that is GSAP and React? You need only two these things and you can replicate it completely. And to be honest with you, I have already started the replication and I have started the first animation sequence, which is you see right on the screen. This part, there is two animations going on. First is this sequential animation, which kind of links between two or three elements. And the second one is that when we hover over a particular section, it kind of pops up. Similar animation is already been replicated into the component which I have created, first one. And we are going to discuss this today. The link for the code is in the description. If you want, you can check it out. Otherwise, we can move forward along with it. Okay, let's start off with the coding first. I want you to clone the repository present in the description. And when you copy it and use npm I and then npm run dev, what you will find is it looks something like this. We have this hero section which has this writings, and in the right section we have this components that will get animated, and we have this pipelines that kind of have this gradient effect. That's not an animation, that is completely done through gradient, linear gradient as the stroke of the pipelines. Just copy it down and you will find this working. Our main target today is to cover that hover effect. Let's jump on how we can include that. So first, in this animations folder, create a file named hero animations or animation.ts. Right, let's import GSAP into it. GSAP. Okay, we haven't installed GSAP. Let's do it first. Then we need to install two things. First will be GSAP and next will be GSAP React. How we are going to do? Let's write it npm I GSAP, cool, and GSAP/React. Let's wait for it to get installed, and it did pretty quickly. Okay, let's write the hero animations first. First, importing GSAP from GSAP. Next, we have GSAP, and then we are creating export const hero animation. Right, makes sense. In this, we are going to include all the animation that will be happening in this hero section. Right. Let's write the hero animations first. So, what are the animations exactly that is going to occur? First animation is happening when we hover over it. So there's a hover effect that we are going to trigger. Next, we are going to target each of these outlined icons, right? So the classes that are defined for these icons are named as icons outlined everywhere throughout. You could have mapped it also. I wouldn't, in fact, recommend you to do that, but I have kept it here for simplicity and making you understand things easily. So these icons are outlined can be used as class names, right, to select these specific icons which are outlined. Let's select it using query. For example, we will call it as elements equals GSAP or document dot query selector all. We'll select all the icons with class name of icon outlined, right? Now we will do animation into days, but first there is a zoom in animation also. When we refresh it, it does not get shown up directly. Wait, let me run it. When we run it, it should pop up instead of coming and directly on the screen. So in order for you to do that, initial animation should be something like this. GSAP from to, and we are targeting elements, right? And first initial and state should be opacity of 0 and scale of 0 also, right? And from here we need to make it the animation to opacity of 1 and delay, let's scale it to 1 first, and delay of 0.5 maybe, so that we can see the animation. And we want individual animations to occur individually, not all at once, so we'll use stagger of 0.05 or 4, whatever. Okay, let's see if it works. It's not working. Why? Because we haven't run this hero animation somewhere. We have to run it in the hero page directly here using use GSAP hook. It's a kind of use effect hook, similar to use effect hook. You can add dependencies here also. And here, let's run hero animations. Let's import it and let's run it. Kind of pops up, right? But still, initially it was already there in the screen. Like it renders on the screen, then gets removed, right? Instead, initially also you want their opacity to be 0. So let's go to the icons outlined in the global CSS and directly include opacity as 0. So initially there will be no opacity for these outlines. And similarly, you want this pipelines also to get disappeared. What you can do, you can directly go to these path and directly go to this path. And one thing you can do directly into this div element, into this SVG, let's include a class name of initial opacity SVG pipeline. Let's name this, and then opacity of 0. And now using this class, you can initially keep GSAP.to with the element name of SVG pipeline. Let's make its opacity to 1 with of delay of 1 second and duration of 1 second. It should look slow and when it comes to the picture, right? No, not like that. Yeah, even slower than that. 2 seconds. Let's keep it. That makes more sense. Okay, now we have to include the hover effect into individual animations. Let's do it. How we are going to do? We have already selected the elements, right? Let's include some individual animations into it. So what we have to do is, I'll give you a rough structure of what we are going to do. We will write a single animation, and that should be applicable to all of those outlined icons component. How is it possible? Just map it out. Map out all the animations into this elements. Let's map out these elements, because these elements are not just single elements, but all the element with the class name of icons outlined. So from all these elements, just map out elements dot map, for example. Not map, but let's iterate through it. For each element, individual element, what we are going to do is, we are going to define two things, or we are going to take out two things from it. What? I'll show you. First is this this image, and the next one is this image, right? First image is this dish or whatever, and the next element is dish colored. So we are going to take all of both of them, right? Icon 1 and icon 2. How we are going to take? We will be taking it directly from query selector, because that's most convenient, I would say. How? Like this. Element dot for each okay, query selector all, right? We are taking all with query of image, and this will pass two values from each of them, and that will be stored in the array. All those elements will be, first element will be default, next element will be icon colored. So what we did was, we selected all the query with query value of image, which was this one. And whenever we go to icons outlined, which is the element which we have selected, this elements, inside the individual element, it has two images for each icons outlined, right? So it will pass two values, which will be icon default, first one, and the icon colored, the second one. Along with it, we will select the text also. This text element is also there, and we need to select this. So how we are going to select? It has a class name of text already given, right? So let's select it based on the text class name. Const text element equals element dot l dot query selector all dot text. This class name gets selected individually for each element. Let's apply this animation throughout. Like I said, I'm writing out one animation and making it applicable for each of them by using for each loop. So let's write the animation. First, we will use GSAP dot to, and first animation will be something like icon in the icon default, right? And the animation will be something like this. Next animation, I'll write down all of this first, and then I'll explain you the individual animation that I'm going to apply. Cool. Next will be from to, and here we'll have initial and final outcome also. And similar to this, we'll be having one more animation. Let's start from the icon default, which we are going to apply. For example, the icon color element, right? Okay, let me explain you the first animation that we are going to do. First, you can see when we are not hovering, this outlined icon is visible. and the colored icon is not visible, right? And the sequential animation is the second half. First, understanding the hover effect. First, it's the colored one is not visible, but when I hover over it, the colored element gets visible, right? When we hover over it, the colored element along with this arrow is getting visible. So the default icon, when we hover, it should be something like 0, right? Opacity of 0 when we hover. When we scale, like when we hover, it should have opacity of 0. It should scale down to a little bit of smaller width and height, and it should go a bit above the screen. When we like kind of hover, it goes up with the reduction in the scale value, and at the same time the text value gets visible. So opacity gets 0 when hovered, scaling is reduced a bit, and while positioning is getting up of the main base height. And all of these animations should happen when we hover. So how are we going to define when this hover effect will trigger when we hover? That will only happen when we use all of this function inside a particular hover function, on hover function, right? I forgot to include it inside, that's why. So all of these animations, let's include it inside the hover effect. Cool. See, this is not a default function, right? Inbuilt or something like that. We will use some JavaScript also a little bit. I'll show you now only then if that is the case. I'll include it as all of them inside this. We'll have on hover out also function. That is also not a inbuilt function, but rather we have defined it. And both of them will be triggered when we hover in or hover out. And how we are going to do it? We'll add an event listener, element dot add event listener. And when we enter the specific mouse enter, we want this animation to get triggered, right? So on hover will get triggered. Similarly, when on mouse out or on mouse leave, which is more applicable, this function should run. Okay, so as I told you, these are not default function or inbuilt function. We have defined it and we are triggering it based on enter and leaving of that particular section. Cool. First one was done. Second, icon default. And there's one more animation that needs to be happen here only. Icon default animation, and after that icons colored animation will be happening here. Wait, here icon colored animation should happen here. Colored. Let's do the colored animation, what we are going to do. So colored icon is this one. When we hover, the screen color is the colored icon. All the colored ones are the colored icons. And when we hover, it should come into the picture, right? And this gets disappeared and this gets appeared. Opacity of 1. We'll scale it a bit, right? To 0.9. A little bit of a reduction in size, right? And then Y should also go to that particular position where the default icon is there. A bit scale up. This was the colored animation. Now we have text animation, right? Text animation has from and to values. So first, initially opacity will include 0, as when we haven't hovered, its opacity is 0. Y position is initially a bit down, so positive of 5, and then initial scale is 1. We are keeping 1 because we are going to add the final position also. Let's add opacity of 1 when the final animation, when we hover. Y as like -5. Right, 5 is in the negative, like downward direction. Negative of 5 is in the upward direction of y-axis. Next, we'll scale it to a bit like 1.1, something like that. Okay. Wait, this is, apologize, this is the text one. That's why it's not getting text element. Yeah. When we again trigger it, yeah, it stays there because we haven't added hover out function. We haven't written that. Let's write the hover out function also. In the hover out function, we'll be having some same approach like it is in this one. For example, we'll be having first will be GSAP dot to icon default first animation on this, right? And I mean, let's okay, for like similar it was before, and here from to first is icon default, next is icon colored, next is text, right? Text element, and the last one is the complete element. I guess I haven't written it for this one. Okay, we'll write down the one more animation which needs to be included. Now, here we'll be having one more thing, right? Yep. Let's write down the last animation when hovered into this. So what it should be on complete icon outlined, which is available, right? The L1. What should it be? I'll show you. First, it should be initial. When we use C, when we hover, it has a background color of white, and we hover out, it has that gray color, which is kind of transparent. When we hover, it does not change any color, right? So we need to include that color change also. So initially, background color was this one, F6, F9, FD. You can copy it down directly. Initial color was this, right? And we scaled it. Initial scaling was 1. We scaled it to scale of 1.05 and background color of white. As you can see, when we hover, it has background color of white, right? From this color, it has a background color of white. Also, it has a box shadow or a background shadow kind of stuff. Let's include that box shadow of 0.3 pixel y-axis and 10 pixel the depth, and 1 pixel of like spreadness, whatever that is. D0, D8E2. This is what the color is. So now when we hover, I think it should work completely fine. Yep, kind of works. So now what we have to do, okay, one thing is left. The border we did not remove. Border should be none, right? No border when we hover. Yep. Okay. Instead of none, it kind of completely disappears. Let's make it 2 pixels solid transparent. It changes to a particular color that is more smooth as for animations. That's why, you see, we triggered all of them. Cool. What we will do now is the hover out animations. This is like all of them are right now. If you see, all of them are like triggered. Instead, we will switch off when we hover out. Okay, when we hover out of the elements, we want opacity to be 1. We want scale it to normal size, right? And Y should be down to 0, the default one. The colored icon should also get disappeared, as default ones getting appeared with opacity 1. Then it should be opacity of 0. Then scale, it should also down to 1 and Y of 0. Now the text element, from opacity of 1, which it was previously, right? Opacity of 1 with Y position of -5. You have to define these things. Like if you had previously, you better define it, otherwise it will have that jerky effect when you are animating all those stuff. So better define it. Scale of 1. From these position, let's include it to opacity of 0, because when we hover out, the text should disappear. Y should have 5 in the Y axis. Scale it down to 0.9. Okay. Also, when we hover down, you see the text element gets like scaled down and it goes a bit lower. Along with it, the background color also changes, right? From white to transparent, or kind of that exact color which we have. So what things that we are going to change? Background color from white, when we hover out, from white, and scale 1.05, which we had previously. This one you have to define. If you don't define, again it will be a jerky effect. That's why I'm defining it. Background color of F6, F9, FD. Okay, and then scale down to 1, and box shadow again. Instead of writing it as none, let's include all the pixel values which we had and only reduce the color or change the color. Otherwise, we will get a jerky motion kind of thing. Right. And border of 2 pixels solid, which it was previously. Hash C3CCD8. Cool. I think we have it. The main animation which we were expecting right now. When we hover, we have this. When we hover out, we have this. All right. This outline comes into picture. Let me see why it is happening. Okay, I can default as this. Okay, this should be element. Yeah, I think now it's working. When we hover, we have this animation. When we hover out, all of them are fixed. So I think things are working fine. And this is the final outcome which we expected, like in this one. And similar to that, the next sequential animation we'll discuss in the next video, because otherwise it will get very long. And comment down your thoughts. Let me know your suggestions.